silly season is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. The time is nigh where Dave and I are combing through all the defensemen in the NHL, and we're coming up with a few targets for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We've got three guys apiece. I've got three, Dave's got three, and we've got trade proposals for each player. And I've got an absolute blockbuster of a deal prepared for you all. I didn't even tell you, Dave, who I have prepared or what this trade could be, but it's going to knock your socks off, pal. Can't wait to get into this conversation. So we'll chat about that. We're going to break down game one of the Eastern Conference final from last night and tee up game two of the West final tonight. That'll be going down. Hopefully it's as good as the first time around a couple of nights ago, but that's what got in store on today's edition of Locked On Leafs.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my coach, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts from if you haven't yet. And you can also catch us now up on YouTube via video format, and we are on our road to 1,000 subscribers. We're inching close to 900, so we're getting close. But once we do get to 1,000, we'll be giving away a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. So make sure you're subbed up if this is your first time joining us. Appreciate giving us an opportunity. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and you come back because we got new episodes each and every day, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. And today, Dave, we're going to talk a lot of Leafs, actually, because like I alluded to, it's gotten to the point in the offseason where I think we could start talking about the future. What should the Maple Leafs do to help improve this team and finally get over that hurdle so that we're not sitting here in this exact same position next June talking about what trades do the Leafs need to do to get better? No, hopefully we're talking about the Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference final like the Tampa Bay Lightning and Rangers are this season. So we've crafted a couple of trades and some players around the league that we think could help shore up the defense. So we're focusing on defense today and how we can improve the blue line. So you've got three players, I've got three players, and we're just going to kind of go back and forth. We've kind of provided a little bit of a report for the player, why we think it'd be a good fit, what the trade package might look like, all that sorts of stuff. So I'm excited. Let's get right into it, Dave. Why don't you go ahead and you start us off? Who's the first player, or one of them? I'm not saying that these are in any particular order, but who are one of the players that you've kind of circled as a guy that you want the Maple Leafs to target for a trade?
It's one that we were kind of talking about during the season, so I'm revisiting an old trade target, and that is one Jakob Chychrun from the Arizona Coyotes. I don't think the Yotes are in a position where he will be sticking around past this season, going into next season. So I think there could be a move to be made here for the Leafs if they want to upgrade on their blue line. This is a guy that has proven to play both left and right side, so you can definitely, he's got some versatility to him. And what I like here is this is a player that has the offensive instincts. We know that he can produce offensively. Injuries, yes, have been a bit of a concern, but what I like most about him is his mobility. I think the Leafs need a little bit better mobility on the back end. You know, Morgan Rielly, he's pretty good with that. But outside of Morgan Rielly, the Leafs don't really have as many defensemen who can prove that have that mobility. Jakob Chychrun isn't the perfect defenseman, but I think he is an ideal target if you're the Leafs. He's got a good contract and a situation. Yeah, really good contract in a situation where the Coyotes are definitely looking to move on from him.
So what do you think the trade ask would be from the Yotes? Like, what's the proposal that you've thought about to try and get this deal done?
Well, we've kind of gotten a little bit of an idea of what the Yotes were looking for during the season. they were looking for a lot. And obviously, there's a good reason why, because this is a guy who's on, as we said, a pretty much of a sweetheart deal in terms of what he signed
Like
right now.
4.6, 4.4, something like that. It's honestly 4 and change, somewhere in like the mid fours is what his number is at for a guy who's
4.6, you are right. So he has that 4.6 million for the next three seasons.
pretty
He
good.
does have a modified no trade clause starting the year after in 2023. So if the Yotes are going to trade him, now's the time, because there's no issue in terms of figuring out what teams they can't trade him to. So yeah, I think for sure they're going to start with Rasmus Sandin has to be on the table. You need a young defenseman going the other way. We know where the Yotes are right now. They need to go young. They need assets. So I'm thinking it's going to be Sandin's going to be the first thing that they'll ask for. The first round pick will definitely be another thing that they'll ask for.
25th overall.
Yeah, so the 25th overall, which was confirmed. We forgot we were going to mention the other podcast when the Rangers moved on and the Flames getting eliminated. The Leafs were now bumped to 25th. So that's and then, but the thing is, that's a 25th overall pick. That's probably not going to be enough. So they're going to have to add in some other parts. How much? That's the tough part, because Arizona could definitely say we want a Matthew Nyes included in that, or we want,
I'm not making that deal.
like for me, that's like saying we'll offer you something, and then they're like, all right, we need Matthew Nyes. We're just like, whoa. Do you wanna take my wallet, my keys, my phone,
Yeah.
my house? Like, so like we have to be a little careful of something like that. But I think you're gonna have to add in maybe one or two other prospects. But then the Leafs are gonna have to ask the Yotes to take on some salary, right? There's gotta be money in, money out in this situation. So
Well, there is
it's
a
just
certain goaltender who I could think of that
yeah.
you may want to shed some salary that potentially they could send the other way if the Yotes are willing to do something like that.
Yeah, like Mrazek, that would almost make the money work, right? He's at 3.8, Chychrun's at 4.6. You can kind of maybe throw in another player if you
Yeah,
need to.
Sandin's money right there at
Yeah.
3.6 plus Sandin's probably going to make,
A
if you
rough
were to sign his RFA deal, around $1 million. So
million,
that's
half,
the money
2
right
million
there.
even. I think that would make the salary work. And then it just all comes down to ironing out picks and maybe another low tier prospect to make it worth it for the Yotes. I think there's a deal to be made here. It's just I'm wondering if the Yotes are going to try to go the Jack Eichel route where they want a bunch of stuff back. I
Mhm.
just think Chychrun's good. He's not superstar good. So the
No.
Leafs have to be careful here and not to overextend themselves either.
Yeah, and I don't think they will, or else they probably would have done that midseason. So
Exactly.
I think you're probably close with like a Sandin, 25th
Mrazek.
overall, and then you also give up the Mrazek for them taking on that contract.
Mhm.
You have to give like an SDA or a Hirvonen or something like that,
Yeah,
in
exactly.
exchange for taking on that contract, because they really don't have many mid round picks left to do stuff like
No,
that. All their seconds and thirds they've all been dealt away. All right, so I like that one, Jakob Chychrun. One that I've been thinking about is Adam Larsson, from the Seattle Kraken. 29 years old, 6'3", 210-pound right shot defenseman. Just signed a 4-year, $4 million per deal in Seattle last year. So he does have a no trade clause. So that would have to be waived. But in this la la land that we're living in, I'm assuming Adam Larsson would rather compete for a Stanley Cup than compete for the first overall pick again with the Seattle Kraken. But this guy honestly would be a terrific player, because you think about it. You pair him up with Morgan Riley, Larsson and Riley, and they've got Muzzin, and you can keep TJ Brody with Muzzin, and then Gio and Liljegren. That looks so good to me. That is such a fantastic, like, 6-man unit. You talk about he's a good skater. He's got a good first pass, but he's physical. And the physicality element is what I think is really important here. Over 1,200 blocks in his career, over 1,600 hits in his career. And he's a guy who suppresses shots, only gave up 28.51 shots against per 60, which is 29th best among all NHLers this season. So it's a guy who doesn't allow a lot of shots because he is getting into your grill a lot and he's blocking them a lot. It's not allowing him on net. Ranked 40th in scoring chances allowed as well, which tops every single Maple Leaf this season in per 60 rate, except for Mark Giordano, who came over halfway through the season. So he's the type of player who I think would be a really solid pickup for the Maple Leafs to insert into that top four and really round out the right side of this group. It gives them that guy with size who can kill penalties, and he's still, at $4 million, it's extremely affordable for a guy in your top four. So that's a player who I've been looking at. In terms of what it would cost for Adam Larsson, it's no longer like he clearly is infamous for the Larsson for Taylor Hall 1-for-1 deal.
Oh man,
not so sure that it's going to be like a Larsson for Nylander 1-for-1 type of trade. Absolutely freaking not. Kyle Dubas is not Peter Chiarelli. No, he's not. But what I think would make some sense, like it's Seattle. They need picks. They need prospects. So, Ben Sherratt at the trade deadline went for about a first-round pick. That's a top four, defenseman, and that's basically what Adam Larsson is at this point. Now, there's some term with Adam Larsson where Sherratt was a UFA, but I'm thinking either, a first-round pick at 25th overall for a guy like Larsson, or, Rasmus Sandin could potentially be that guy, a young up-and-coming guy who projects to be a top four defenseman, puck-moving type of young defenseman that could grow with that Seattle club in their window, and they get themselves a really good prospect in return. So that's kind of the thought process I went with Adam Larsson as one of my options. Quick thoughts?
I don't mind. I actually considered Adam Larsson. I just wonder if Seattle would consider moving him. They think like they made certain moves for certain guys like Larsson,
Yep.
Jane Schwartz. Like there were a bunch of those guys that were brought in. I'm thinking that were brought.
Alexiak.
Yeah, like that was the core. Oh my god, why am I blanking on? Oh, Yanni Gourde. Like those were the guys that were kind of like the support while they got it, while they tried to figure out the guys that could put them over the top, right? Get those young prospects. I feel like, yeah, but at the same time, if you're Seattle, there were some misses that were had in that expansion draft and what they did in the off season. So like if a team offers you a first round pick for Adam Larsson, why would you say no? Right? You're not in a position where you're competing now, and Larsson's deal might look good right now, but when you're not competing and you're not going anywhere as a team, does it make sense to have that player around? So I think, yeah, I wouldn't mind Adam Larsson if the price was right.
And he was a guy when he was in, I mean, there was always rumor about the Leafs being interested in Adam Larsson.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see whatever happens with that one. All right. Why don't we take a quick break when we get back? We can get back into our picks. We've still got 4 players to go through that we've decided to trade for, I suppose, playing little armchair GM. But before we continue, Dave, why don't you tell the good folks about our show sponsor, Built Bar?
Built Bar continues to amaze. They always find different flavors, different treats to make you want to come back and find a healthy alternative to your snacks. Well, guess what, folks? They have finally brought granola bars to Built.com. Built granola bars come in 3 unbelievable flavors: chocolate peanut butter, chocolate coconut, and white chocolate berry. Want to try all 3 flavors? You can get a mixed box at Built.com right now. They're so different from the bars and the puffs that we always talk about because Built granolas are loaded with granola. It's the perfect combination of crunch and chewiness. But just like bars and puffs, these babies are packed with protein and covered in 100% real chocolate. With 150 calories, 15 grams of protein, and 4 grams of sugar, Built granola bars will change your world. Built has cracked the code to get better granola. They're the perfect healthy snack to pack in your lunch, take on the road, or eat as a snack. And they are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. So you've been waiting for a healthy and delicious granola to hit the market. Now's the time to head to Built.com and get the Built granola bars in all those 3 delicious flavors that I mentioned before. To even sweeten the pot just a little bit, you can go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. So that is promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order at built.com.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Dave Morassutti with me. We're your hosts here at Locked On Leafs, and we're going through some potential trade targets for the Maple Leafs blue line going into the offseason. We've already gone through a couple. Adam Larsson was my suggestion, first of three, and the first suggestion for Dave was David Chychrun. Curious to see who you have as your second suggestion for the Maple Leafs to try and make a deal for to improve the blue line.
The next one is over at the Minnesota Wild, and that is Mr. Matt Dumba.
Yes.
I've taken an eye to Matt Dumba a long time ago. Same draft year as Morgan Rielly. 2 picks after Morgan Rielly, actually. This was right-handed shot defenseman, has that nice physical. He brings that physical element. Plus, he's a good offensive player. An unfortunate year for him because he had a broken rib and a punctured lung. Ouch! Like that hurts. And I was watching that Minnesota Wild series against the Blues, and I thought he was one of their best players, at least one of their best defensemen in that series. So here's the caveat. So why would Minnesota trade him? Well, if you look at their cap friendly situation, it ain't good.
No.
They don't have a lot of space. And right now the big thing in Minnesota is they got to try to find a way to bring back Kevin Fiala. If you've heard any, I mean, I'm sure we can talk to our friends over at Locked On Wild, and they would likely say that Kevin Fiala has been the dominant subject in Minnesota along with Marc-Andre Fleury. They got to make space for these guys. Matt Dumba is in the final year of a $6 million deal. It's pricey, but for a top 4 right shot defenseman, that sounds about right. So I think this is a perfect for the Leafs if you want to go in 1 year, get your guy, play on the right side. You can have him play one of those top 2 pairings, depending on how. I mean, he could potentially work with a Morgan Rielly. I was actually trying to see if they ever played together with each other, whether it was at the World Championships or even in juniors together, because I can't remember exactly where he played his junior career. Actually, 2 seconds to check that.
Yeah.
Red.
He's from Saskatchewan, so he probably played in the Dub.
They played in the Dub, but they didn't play with each other. I was trying to remember if they did. They did. But I just think that this is a player that he's kind of in no man's land because he's good. But the Minnesota Wild, it's a luxury to them because they've got a lot of other defensemen there. Kalen Addison, right-hand shot defenseman, a lot cheaper. They would probably rather go with him just because they need to find a way to improve their scoring. So, like, if you're the Leafs, you're not going to trade them a defenseman because I think they got a lot of defensemen, but they do need help up front. So I'm looking at, this is a guy who's on a final year of a deal, so you're probably they're gonna ask for that first round pick from Minnesota. Do you look at moving a guy like Nick Robertson? Do you look at moving a guy like, Leafs gonna have to give some salary? So Alexander Kerfoot, give them some help up front. So I think that's where the Minnesota Wild need more help than they do on the back end. They are stacked on the back end, especially when you got like Spurgeon. You got Brodin. You got a lot of younger guys stepping up as well. I think Matt Dumba would be a good addition for the Leafs.
Yeah, he would definitely be a good addition. He's someone who I've been keeping an eye on for a while, but $6 million pending UFA. I don't know how I feel about that one. It depends on what it would cost, I guess, the transaction, what that would be before I kind of signed off on it. But he's definitely a player that I would not mind to have in the top 4 for the Toronto Maple Leafs, certainly. All right, moving on to my second one. You want the Blockbuster? Like I'm just itching to tell you what it is.
I feel we got to keep them waiting a little bit more, don't we?
Should we keep him waiting till then? All right, we'll keep him waiting. All right, so we'll hold off on the blockbuster for one more round of guys. So I'll move to my next player, and that's Connor Murphy of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, he did just sign an extension last offseason, and which kicks in this year, 4 years at $4.4 million. But, he's 29 years old. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. So he's a big defenseman, right shot. He's another guy. He's got a modified no trade clause. So depending on if the Leafs are on that list or not, I'm not quite sure. But, this is a squad where there are rumors at the deadline that they're willing to listen on anyone not named. I think it was DeBrincat, and that was about it. Everyone else, they're honestly listening. Even like Patrick Kane and Johnny Tays, if they would have said we're looking to move elsewhere, I think they would have looked to make a deal. And this summer, someone could be gone. One of those two guys could get traded. And I think a team that might be going into a rebuild, moving on from a 29-year-old veteran defenseman to bring in, either a pick or a prospect would probably be the right call. A team, maybe they're looking to move out some salary as well and term because it just doesn't fit in their window anymore because I just don't think they're competitive. They don't even have a goalie. But Connor Murphy, pretty good defenseman, but strictly defensive guy. Like, this is somebody who is just like an absolute puck muncher, block shots for breakfast is what this guy does. He'll kill off penalties, but he also suppresses shots. He doesn't give up a lot of high quality chances, 14th in the entire NHL in high danger chances allowed per 60. So, he doesn't give up a lot of quality chances. He keeps everything pretty tight. So that's something that I appreciate, especially if the Leafs do bring back Jack Campbell. His high danger goal percentage was really high. So if you limit those high danger chances, Jack Campbell typically is a much better goaltender. So, you could pair up Connor Murphy with either. You just go straight up full defensive second unit with a Muzzin or a Murphy as your second pair, and then you put Brody back up with Riley, or Riley and Murphy could be a pairing. Either way, I think he's a quality top four guy, and I'm not sure that it would cost a whole lot to bring him in. I think you could potentially kind of a similar deal to Adam Larsson, either Rasmus Sandin perhaps, and then if you need to make the salaries work, maybe it's Mrazek and Sandin. Potentially they'll be willing to take in that goaltender because they don't have a goalie next year. Kevin Lankinen was a UFA, and I'm not sure if they plan on bringing him back. So they can actually use a goaltender. So maybe Peter Mrazek, for a team that's going into a rebuild, they'd be willing to roll the dice on a player like him just to have a competent goaltender, I suppose. And then they obviously get a great prospect in Sandin, who could fill in as a top four guy and grow with that club as they enter another rebuild. So that's kind of the deal that I've thought of, Mrazek and Sandin for Connor Murphy.
Yeah, I think the Blackhawks, really the right thing to do is somewhat of a teardown. Like, I don't know
Do what the Rangers did,
Yeah.
right? They kept like a couple of core guys, like they kept Kreider around, and obviously, I think Trouba was there already, so they kept Trouba. They signed him to that extension. They kept Zibanejad. They knew they had Shesterkin coming in the wings, waiting after Henrik Lundqvist. And then they dealt away like Zuccarello. They sent like a couple of the older veteran players. I mean, McDonough was one of the guys who they decided to move on from. JT Miller was a guy that turned out to be great pieces, but they also got some good stuff back and picks and prospects. And they got cap space, which allowed them to go out and get Panarin. And it really allowed this team to, get to the Eastern Conference Final like we see happening right now. So perhaps Chicago should take a page out of, their original six brethren in the Rangers and do kind of a similar thing where you start to strip down and tear away some of those older core pieces, and you keep your DeBrincat and your Kirby Doc and some of those younger guys. I guess Seth Jones would be your Jacob Trouba-esque level defenseman, and then in 2-3 years maybe you're ready to contend again, and those guys are just entering their prime. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think Chicago. I'm looking at the roster. Like, yeah, I think DeBrincat's gonna stay. Seth Jones for sure. Kirby Doc, Kubalik. Other than that, I think it should be open game on a lot of these guys because
And they don't even have their first round pick. They gave up their first round pick to
I was
Columbus.
gonna say like they need a
for
first round. They don't have they have 2 in 2023, which is good. I think they should definitely be looking to get the worst possible position of the standing, so they get the best possible pick in 2023. That could potentially be Connor Bedard. Like if you're Chicago, you need that. You're not like Kane and Taves are on the last year of their deals. If a team calls about them, you've done your best to keep that window open as long as possible. But now it's time to move on, move to try and make this as painless as possible too. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason why they should be married to a guy like Connor Murphy. So if the Leafs can get him on a decent deal, he is 29, so there's the age factor there too. But he's got some things going for him at least.
Hey man, if there's really a 2-year window on that Matthews ticking time bomb, I think he'll be solid for at least the 2 years. What do we call it? The Matthews doomsday clock should be fine for at least the first couple of years he's here until things really start to get spicy, depending on what happens with Austin Matthews. All right, why don't we take another break? When we get back into it, I think we're gonna probably get to our final couple of picks here, and then have maybe 1 or 2 words to say about the playoffs. Maybe we'll wait until tomorrow and chat about the playoffs, just because we're having so much fun doing all this stuff, and it's already approaching 25 minutes, half hour so far. All right, yeah, we'll take one quick break, and then we get back. We'll give our final 2 players of interest we're thinking the Leafs could trade for, and I still have my blockbuster trade ready, locked, loaded, ready to go, Dave. And it's coming up on the other side. Yeah, you're listening to Locked On Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back into Locked On Leafs. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti, my co-host on the show. We're rolling through some of the trade options that we've thought about for bringing in some potential blue liners from around the NHL. I've gone out and I've said Adam Larsson could be an option. I've said that Connor Murphy could be an option. Dave has gone and he has said Jakob Chychrun could be an option. And who's your second player? And Matt Dumba was the other guy that Dave said potentially the Maple Leafs could try and go after to improve this team's blue line. We've got one more player each to chat about. Why don't you go ahead and tell us all about the third guy that you've thought of as a good upgrade on the Maple Leafs blue line via trade?
This might be a tough one to pull off because he might not even be available, but he might be falling out of favor in Nashville, and that is Dante Fabro.
Okay. Dante Fabro. Explain.
Yeah. So he's an RFA. He has arbitration rights. From what I've been reading about Dante Fabro in a lot of the pieces, he played with Roman Josi this year as an attempt to try to get him going. But it's funny because I was reading one piece about like guys that should stay and guys that could be moved. He wasn't exactly in the he ain't going nowhere pile. Like the Predators aren't exactly saying he's untouchable in in what they're trying to do moving forward. What I think about with Dante Fabro too is
they really bet on that guy though, because like they moved out Ryan Ellis, who was their top right shot defenseman, hoping that Fabro could kind of succeed him. Yeah, I guess it really hasn't been as seamless as a transition as they were hoping.
No, and there's a real potential here that Philip Forsberg is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a guy they are going to likely have to replace. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a 1-for-1 or anything like that, but maybe do you think Nashville looks at William Nylander and thinks about, can we entice the Leafs with a package that makes sense?
What does that look like, though, Dave? I mean, you're not even close with Fabro.
Not even close.
I know. So what are you looking at here? I mean,
you're looking at pieces, right?
Yeah. So what are you looking at? You're probably looking like you need win now talent. That's the thing,
Yeah,
right? If you are, and the problem is both of these squads probably will be vying for the playoffs again next season. I mean, I
exactly.
know, yeah,
But you got like there's you have to. I have to comb through a little bit more. Like I think I look at guys.
Connor Ingram, bring that guy along. Remember that one amazing playoff game he had? I mean, I'm joking, but like, hey, that's actually not like an awful suggestion to
No,
have him
not terrible.
included. I don't think he doesn't hold much weight in the trade value, but I mean, if you just want to toss in a goaltender into the trade, I mean, yeah, sure,
But
I mean, you see Saros.
Eli Tolvanen hasn't exactly lived up to the potential. He's actually not a bad defensive player. They just say that he's offensively. There's a bit of little more to be desired
Mhm.
on that end there. Um, I I just think that there are like, do you look at a Cody Glass? You know, a guy that's struggled to make it. Not struggled actually. He actually did pretty well in the AHL. I think they were kind of trying to bring him along
I,
slowly,
I
but
yeah, keep going.
I think there could be a package here where you get where the Leafs can kind of get a bit younger, but look to get more impactful players.
So my question to you is, are they really better though? Like you're trading away William Nylander and you're bringing in two guys who have underperformed, and who knows if they got it in them. Like, what if Cody Glass is like Michael Dow Cole, who's a good AHLer, but
Mhm.
just never actually gets it done once he gets to the NHL. You know what I mean? Like he hasn't broken out yet. He's still young. I think he's what, 22 or so, 21, 22, 23 maybe. I know he's in his early 20s. And Dante Fabro, same situation. It's a guy who
Both
former
are
first round
23, by the way.
23. Okay, he's approaching that age where it's like you got to do something here. You're
Yeah.
getting rid of prospect status once you kind of get to 24 or so. And then Dante Fabro, you're in the same situation. It's like high expectations, but hasn't quite lived up to it yet. At least you know what you're going to get with Willie Nylander.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a major roll of the dice, because what if you
Oh, for
don't
sure.
what if you don't get that? You know what I mean? Like if I'm trading Willie, I feel like I need something a little bit more concrete than two
Mhm.
lottery tickets where it's like, it, two boomer bust guys. I don't know if I'd be willing to trade Willie for that.
It's a possibility. I mean, the Leafs could just tell Nashville, we're not going to trade Willie, but we can give you the equivalent of a Dante Fabro on the offensive side.
Right. Which I'm trying to think if they even have one of those guys. Uh, I don't know. I'm trying to piece together. I mean, like I guess like a Nick Robertson would be somewhat like be like a Dante Fabro-esque, a guy who, I mean, he was a second round pick. Fabro was a first, but Robinson a couple years younger and has had some good success so far in his pro career. Still has a lot of shine as a prospect, and for all intents and purposes, if you were to redo that draft today, I mean, he's a first round pick all day long,
Mhm.
Nick Robertson. So yeah, potentially you could try and make a swap like that if they really do think that Dante Fabro needs a change of scenery and can't get it done in Nashville. That I'd be more on board with. Don't know if I
Yeah,
can get
the
behind Willie.
Nylander one, I was just suggesting because they do need Forsberg, and like, but this is also like Nashville would have to pony up quite a bit. It's just a matter of like you have like, they also think Dante Fabro's a top 4 guy. He played on the top.
Now, now, if you want to get interesting about potentially making some sort of package that you want to include Willie, you ask for the goaltender, right?
Ooh.
One of the goaltenders, whether it's Yaroslav Askarov, however it's pronounced, the young Russian goalie
Mhm.
who's supposed to be the next Shesterkin, the next Vasilevsky,
Yeah.
so they say, or potentially you see Saros, who's a Vezina caliber goaltender. Now they're in a situation where they have two really good goalies. Maybe you could try and finesse one of those guys out of Nashville for a Willie Nylander. That would be more of a conversation I'd be willing to have. And you can make it a bigger package and have Fabro involved there, and maybe a Robertson or a Sandin involved to kind of even things out, picks, prospects, whatever you want to say. But maybe that would be it. One of the goalies and Nylander as kind of the main pieces going forward, and then you kind of fill in the rest to make it all evened out. That's an interesting idea.
There's always, when there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's hear Blockbuster. I'm waiting for it.
I mean, that would have been a great blockbuster that I mean, we just came up with a blockbuster, but here's the one that I thought of, and it's okay. So the player of interest that I'm looking to trade for, Damon Severson of the New Jersey Devils, 27 years old, so right in that wheelhouse of still in his prime and has a couple of years to go until he, we should expect to fall off. So he's still good to go for a couple of seasons. Now only has 1 year left on his deal at $4.1 million. So perhaps you try and work out an extension before you make that deal happen so that you have him long term. And that would also depend on what the deal would be per se. But I mean, he's a guy 6'2", 205. He's got good size, good skater. He's a two-way type of player. He's really, really effective in the offensive end. He had 46 points this season, 5 goals on the power play. So, if Riley or Giordano kind of slip up, you can spot him into the power play, and maybe he's somebody who could spark it a little bit. 92 blocks, 91 hits this past season. And, he's also a shot suppressor, much like Adam Larsson and Connor Murphy, which is really one of the things that I'm looking for in a top 4 defenseman to partner with either a Muzzin or a Riley is a defensive guy, someone who can, suppress shots in a way. And, he allows less than 30 shots against per 60. And, when you go and you sort through it, that's in the range of a McDonough, a Manson, a Pietrangelo. So that's what you're looking at in terms of a guy who can suppress shots. His expected numbers better than Trouba, Provorov, Lindholm, Pietrangelo, another guy. So I think Damon Severson's an interesting player that you could go out and get. But here's the blockbuster part of the deal, because I'm not only interested in Damon Severson when I'm talking trade with the New Jersey Devils. So here's what I'm offering. I am willing to give up a William Nylander in a trade because I think Severson at least is a proven commodity where Dante Fabro is not. But it gets much larger than that, David. Much larger than that. I'm thinking Bill Nylander, Rasmus Sandin, the 25th overall pick in this year's draft. And as Trey noted, the host of Locked On Devils, there could be some interest in Jack Campbell this offseason if he ends up getting to free agency. Let's just go ahead and bypass the free agency part. Let's put his rights involved into this deal, into this equation. And coming back, I want the 2nd overall pick in this year's draft, Damon Severson and Mackenzie Blackwood. That, my friend, is a blockbuster.
Trying to find it here. Do I still have it? I wrote it down. You and I had a podcast one time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I threw it out. No, that's my luck. Right after the podcast, we were kind of discussing, we should get together with some other Locked On NHL hosts to do some podcasts. I wrote down on a receipt. I swear it's probably in the trash right behind me. I wrote down on the receipt, Nylander for 2nd overall pick? ? We said, no, our boy Trey is looking to move that pick. And the New Jersey Devils have made it known that they're considering moving that 2nd overall pick. Because the New Jersey Devils have made a lot of picks. They haven't been able to find the pick.
And there is a player in this draft,
there is
Yuri Slafkovsky, who is just an absolute talent, just a great winger, Slovakian winger who played at the World Juniors last year, played at the Olympics, played at the World Championships this past, last week, a couple weeks ago, and he was fitting in that men's tournament as an 18-year-old. He was fantastic. And Corey Pronman of The Athletic actually in his recent May rankings, with May 31st, so literally like 3 days ago, anointed him as his number 1 prospect. And that's the guy who I'm assuming that the Montreal Canadiens will probably take Shane Wright. Slavkovsky could be there for the picking at number 2. That's somewhat of your Nylander replacement, and it's younger, it's cheaper, and maybe this is somebody who will be a little bit more consistent, but it might take a little bit. And the New Jersey Devils, it sounds like they're a little impatient, and they spent a lot of money on Jack Hughes, they spent a lot of money on Nico Hischier, they went out and they bought Dougie Hamilton in free agency last year. So they've got a lot of money invested in players. They want to start getting some ROI and some playoffs. And I think that Willie Nylander would be a guy who they look at as someone who could put them over the top. He's got that star power on the wings that could really help them there. I mean, Jesper Bratt had a fantastic season. Dawson Mercer, he's a good player. But I think Will Nylander brings a bit of a different element and star power with those guys. So I think that that's why both of these clubs, you could see some interest on both sides.
I do think that these are two clubs that should be talking if they haven't been already.
Yeah, and then obviously you're getting Severson as well to improve the back end, and then you're rolling the dice on a Mackenzie Blackwood, hoping that he bounces back. And he's like right at that age of 25 years old, where it's like, okay, this is your time to blossom into the goalie that you were expected to become, or you can kind of fade off. But it's a 1-year deal, 2.8 million. I'm willing to roll that dice on somebody who has been a tandem starter, at least in the NHL, considering there's not a whole lot of other options if Jack Campbell does not return. And at $2.8 million, I can stomach that for Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a guy that I personally think has been the victim of being on the New Jersey Devils. Usually the New Jersey Devils are a sound defensive team, and he's put up respectable numbers, except when they're not a very good team, hasn't really looked good for him. He put up pretty decent numbers during his junior years when he was with the Barrie Colts.
Mm-hmm.
He did all right when he was in the AHL. Especially he was in the ECHL. He had some pretty decent numbers there. He actually 1 year for Albany, he was their starter. The first year in Albany in the playoffs, didn't do too bad there. You just have it just has to be, are all the pieces you're getting back from Willie Nylander, are they going to be enough to put the Leafs over the top? I think some people look at Damon Stevenson and think, is he that good? Is he good? I think the problem is he's on the New Jersey Devils, who aren't exactly the most. It's not a team a lot of people, I think, check on a lot, right? And they're not known for like the Leafs and Devils play two different styles of hockey. They're very different teams, but the Leafs have been able to find guys that maybe get overlooked a little bit or are not seen as star caliber, and they work with the Leafs. I think of TJ Brody. When that signing was made, I'm like, he's not a bad defenseman. He might be an okay, number 4 guy. But when he came here, he was their top pairing defenseman with Morgan Rielly, and it worked.
Yep.
So I think there's something to be said that the Leafs have found ways to make players like that work. Some might consider William Nylander. The Leafs are gonna have to get a haul from. I just don't know if you're gonna get that. You're gonna have to set. You're not. I don't say settle in a Nylander trade, but there's a reputation of what he is out there. So you have to kind of take that as well. But we also
wonder, but I also wonder how much of that reputation is only like in the Toronto market, because I remember reading a story in the Athletic. I think it was a Pierre LeBrun after the season was over, and it said a rival GM was quoted saying, if they decide to blow it up, like, we're here ready to pick whoever the hell we want. And we're licking our chops, ready to take somebody off their scrap heap if they're looking to move on from some of those star players. So I don't necessarily know if around the league Nylander has, as bad a reputation as we deem it in Toronto. Because at the end of the day, the guy had 80 points in 81 games this year. It's pretty darn productive, despite the inconsistencies we saw.
This is true. No, this is very true. That's why I think the Leafs are going to be patient. But the thing is this type of move, it means it's got to happen sooner rather than later because it involves the second overall pick. Now,
And Cam was right.
right, right. So I think that's where where the Leafs are going to have to be. They have to be almost dead certain that they're going to be ready to move off from Willie Nylander, because that might be a tough one for Kyle Dubas to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's silly season, and it's just a fun little blockbuster that I thought of. Like, I the only other player who I potentially would love to add into this deal. I just don't know if it would work, or because like the second overall pick that's a lot of value, like a lot of value. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I mean, like Nylander, you probably have to give up for the second overall pick alone, like Nylander maybe plus, like realistically, for that type of pick. But
Yeah.
like, could you somehow also get like a Miles Wood added into this deal somehow? Like that would be the type of player like that middle six grinder,
Mhm.
like a second line power forward that the Leafs kind of desperately need. That's the type of player that I also look at on the Devils. But again, I think that's also a team that's looking to compete. So I'm not so sure that they'll be looking to move on from a guy like Miles Wood. The reason why they would move on from Severson is because he's 1 year away from free agency, right? So that I think that's another reason why I do. But if you're Toronto, you probably should also make sure that Severson's open to an extension if you're moving on from Nylander, Sandin, as well. I mean, I know you're getting the second overall pick and a dynamite, winger prospect or potentially a Shane Wright. But still, I think they'd be smart to at least chit chat with Severson's agent to see what they can do. But yeah, fun little exercise, Dave. This was fun. We'll definitely have to do this again for, so I think we'll do it again for next week. We'll go top 6 options. We'll do a bottom 6 options.
Goaltending.
Maybe we'll get into goaltending again and see what the trade market looks like. Come up with some deals and whatnot. It's silly season, pal. It's silly season. So this is what we got to do to kind of keep that Leafs content fresh, alive, and well. But I had fun. You had some great trade ideas, some really good players that obviously would help this team immensely. I like to think that I came up with some decent proposals as well, though maybe slightly silly with that last blockbuster. It got the creative juices flowing, got them flowing. So we'll see. Maybe some crazy deal can get pulled off at some point, or potentially we just kind of roll it back. They sign Lyubushkin, and or not even. I mean, as of now, if they re-sign Liljegren, maybe Hall's the top 4 defensemen that we don't necessarily really want, but end up getting. Who knows? We'll see what happens this offseason. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time we'll be talking about the Leafs blue line going into next year. All right, pal, that'll do it for us here today. I wanted to quickly chat about the game last night. Rangers won game 1, really just beat up on Vasilevsky.
Igor.
The Igor chants, Igor's better. Igor's better. They were awesome.
That was a good chant. I love that.
That was a spectacular chant by the MSG crowd. So congrats to the Rangers getting game 1 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. I am on the Rangers train in this one.
Oh, you're joining me on the Rangers train, huh?
I want them to win because I have futures bets on the Rangers to make it out of the East. Do I think they'll win? I maybe think a little differently after tonight. I'll be honest. Maybe a little bit. I might be joining.
A friend of mine said, yeah, but watch Andrei Vasilevsky have like a 40 save shutout in game 2.
Well, it's typically what he does after he loses a game. We know what the stats are like when
We know
what to lose the playoff game. Exactly. So game 2 should be interesting. Game 2 of the Western Conference Final goes down tonight. I got a quick stat pack actually that I will let the people know about. And it has to do with Mike Smith because he was awful in game number 1. He gets yanked. Mikko Koskinen goes in, stops 20 of 21 shots. And the conversation, you go Koskinen, you go Smith for game 2. What are you doing? And the coach wasn't necessarily, he didn't name a starter. He said, we'll deal with it tomorrow, Jay Woodcroft said. Well, how about for this statistic for you, Jay? Mike Smith, 0-3 with an .823 save percentage and a .677 goals against in his 5 game 1s with Edmonton. But in the 3 follow-up game 2s that he's played with the squad, he's got a goals against of 133, a 962 save percentage, and a 2-on-1 record, with that lone loss being a 1-0 overtime loss to the Winnipeg Jets last season. Yeah, I think if history shows anything, they should probably go with Mike Smith for game 2. That's what I'm saying.
Don't disagree with that.
Oilers might win game 2. They may head to Edmonton with a split series here.
They almost made a comeback. They
They
were a few bounces away from that being a tie game going overtime.
They did. They certainly did. Well, tomorrow when we return for Friday's podcast, we'll be able to talk about it. See exactly what happens in game 2. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the dope. I guess we'll find out in the next 24 hours. The puck drop tonight, game at 8 o'clock, should be a good one. But that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck, at D_Morassutti. Also follow the show at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, smash that like button if you're on YouTube. Leave a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on the trade proposals. Am I whack? Am I crazy? Did I take silly season way too far? Let me know. Let us know any other thoughts that you have, or any other trade proposals as well that you may have thought about. You can leave those on the YouTube channel, or you can hit us up on Twitter if you're listening via audio form. All right, that's going to do it for us here today, Dave. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked